All right. Good morning, everybody. Stephen Michael Miller here. It is Wednesday morning, November 20th. So glad to be here today. And one of the things I love about self improvement, about self development, is it all comes down to you. It all comes down to truly what it is that you want, what it is that you want to get after. And one of the biggest factors in getting after what it is that you want is literally it comes down to just taking action, just taking action. And taking action is actually it's a topic that is extremely important. It's a topic that we definitely need to talk about, and it's a topic that we all feel a little bit differently about. But I want to talk about specifically what we can do to take more action, to get fear and anxieties and hesitations out of the way, get those things out of the way that keep us from taking that massive action. See, I think it's easy for a lot of us to dream. A lot of us dream about what we want. We think about the things that we wish were different. We think about the things that we'd like to accomplish, maybe things that we'd like to have in our lives. But when it comes down to it, so often we don't take those simple steps. We just don't take those tiny little simple actions. Or sometimes we think that maybe our goal is too big, or our desire, too far out there. It's nothing that's in our immediate future, maybe. So because it's so far out, or so far away, because we can't see the end, or we can't see that coming into our lives, it stops us, and we tell ourselves, well, maybe I just shouldn't do it. Maybe I'm just not going to do it right now. Maybe this just isn't for me. And we don't take action. So I want to talk about how to get past that. And now I've got 7 kids. I think I may have said that before, but if not, I do have 7 children, and I love my kids. They're amazing individuals. They're all completely different. But what's interesting is that children, babies in particular, they all follow a very specific pattern. See, babies know how to take action. Babies are they don't allow fear to get in their way, because babies don't have fear yet. They haven't made certain decisions or beliefs based on experiences that they've had. And so they are this kind of fearless force where they go forward, they move forward, and they always are just taking massive action. I want to talk about what this looks like, because if you've ever observed a baby, then you've seen certain things. If you've taken time to really look at babies and how they act or react to their surroundings, they follow very specific patterns. You see, they observe their surroundings, they see what is possible. They notice things around them. Very specifically, if I could talk about maybe one of my children, I remember our youngest, when he was just born, he had 6 other siblings that would run around him. They'd make a lot of noise. They'd talk. They'd laugh. They'd scream, and and they'd watch him, and they'd play with him at times. But more often than not, my youngest would be laying on a blanket or something on the floor, and he'd be laying on his back. And if you've ever observed babies, what do they do when they're laying on their back? Well, they'll do a couple different things. Typically, they'll make some noises as well. They'll start to do the goos and the gahs, and they'll try to form different sounds and different kind of things in their mouths, not knowing yet how to actually create words, but they'll be forming those sounds in their mouths. And as they're laying on their backs, they're oftentimes kind of kicking their legs and moving their arms around, and it's all a little sporadic. But what they're actually doing is they're observing their surroundings, and they're trying to imitate what they see as success, what they see other people doing. See, they're observing their younger siblings running around them and speaking and laughing and doing all these different activities, and they want in. They want to do those activities too. So the baby will try to imitate. The baby will try to do those things that their older siblings or that their parents are doing right at that moment as well. And it won't turn out the same way. Obviously, babies don't come out talking right away. They don't come out walking right away, but they'll do everything that they can to make that possible. Right? They'll shake their arms around. They'll start utilizing those muscles a little bit. They're shaking, and I call it the dying cockroach. If you've ever lived in an area that has cockroaches, you know what I mean. The cockroach is kind of sitting there on its back, just twitching its arms and legs. And anyway, the babies will do that. But what's interesting in this whole conversation is the baby's not afraid to fail. The baby's not afraid to not get it right the very first time. So without that inhibition, without that idea of what failure is, that baby will move forward taking massive action every day. As a matter of fact, if you've ever tried to mimic what a baby does, if you ever try to mimic what a baby does on a daily basis, then you start to get it. I mean, it's difficult work. They're not taking it easy. They are constantly moving. If they're not sleeping, and if they're not eating or pooping, right, then they are constantly moving their arms and their legs and trying to roll over and trying to move, and they're doing these massive actions to progress. See, because failure isn't an option for them, failure isn't a thing for them. They're just taking massive action towards their end goal, which is their end goal is to walk or to run and to speak. Now, it's interesting as we look at this, as these babies are taking this massive action, they get encouragement typically, right? It's very, very normal for a baby to get massive encouragement as they're taking this massive action, as they're moving and thrusting their arms around and shaking and trying to roll over and move as they're doing all these different movements, they're getting encouragement. And who's giving them encouragement? Well, their siblings are, their parents are. I remember, I mean, I know this over and over and over again with each one of my children as they would, first like move their arm a certain way, or as they would first roll over, they'd have this kind of like this cheerleading squad. Either it was, their mom and I, or their mom and I and their siblings, depending on where they came in the row. But they'd get this massive encouragement. We always tell them, "Oh, good job." And we clap for them and we scream and we cheer. We say, "You're doing such a great job," as they were, twitching their arms a little bit, or as they were moving just a little bit differently, or as they were starting to form their mouths and make different sounds. We would cheer them on and say they could do it and good job. And that's a little bit different than how we act as adults, because as adults, we typically don't encourage ourselves that way. If we try something, for some reason, we feel that because we're an adult already, that we should somehow be perfect at the things that we try the very first time. But the reality is no, if we've never done it before, or if we haven't mastered a specific thing, then we shouldn't be perfect at it right away. Just because we're adult doesn't mean we should, right? I'm a father, but when I had my first child, I had never been a father before. So even though I was an adult and I became a father, I'm not yet a perfect father, because I haven't learned the things that I need to do. And so if I can be encouraging with every single action that I take as a father, sometimes I'm going to fail. Sometimes I'm going to do things wrong. I'm going to say things the wrong way. I'm going to offend my child, or whatever. I will make mistakes. But if I can be super encouraging to myself, even through those mistakes, and tell myself, you know what? Yes, I made a mistake, and yes, I didn't quite get there, and yes, I didn't do it exactly the way I wish I would have done it, but I'm making progress. And if I can encourage myself and clap myself along and be like, go, Stephen, you can do this, then I believe that my outcomes, my end goal of being a good father, will come sooner than if I get down on myself and say, hey, oh, Stephen, you suck. That was horrible. Look what you did. That was the worst thing you could have ever done. It's not about not being real. I mean, it's okay to be real with yourself, and it's okay to say, hey, I can definitely do better. But the encouragement is most important, that you say, not only can I do better, but I'm going to do better. And look at what I've already done so far. I haven't killed my child yet. I haven't I haven't neglected that baby. I've done as much as I can. I'm learning in this process. I'm growing. I'm becoming better. That's what it's important to focus on. So if you think about the way that a baby grows and molds and moves and reaches their goal, if the baby's goal is to walk, then the baby starts off just barely moving its arms, and the baby's failing as it's doing that. But that baby is taking massive action anyway, happily taking massive action typically, right? Excitedly taking that massive action. Then eventually, at some point, the baby learns how to turn over and manipulate their muscles and their bodies in a way where they can actually start to move in different ways. The baby begins to scooch on the ground on their stomach, and all the while that baby's not walking yet. That baby is failing in that action. They're not achieving that goal yet, but they're still taking massive action every single day. Like literally, a baby will move nonstop. If the baby's not eating, sleeping, or pooping, that baby's going to be moving constantly to try to develop those muscles, to grow, to get to the point where they can do what they see the successful people doing, right? Which is, well, they see them walking, they see them talking, and so they're doing all those different actions. And they move from scooching or scooting on their bellies and doing kind of the army crawl, if you've seen that, to then they will begin to try to get up on their hands and knees and begin to crawl. And the crawling leads to pulling themselves up on a couch or up on a table, or utilizing their siblings or their parents' arms to pull themselves up and kind of stable themselves on the ground on these undeveloped legs, but they're still trying to move every day. And they'll start to move their feet and their legs and bounce up and down. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been to the gym and I've done lunges and I've done squats, and babies do like a million squats a day. I mean, I've never counted, but they, if you've ever watched a baby, especially when they start to get excited and they get that cheering around, they start bouncing up and down and they're literally like squatting and standing and squatting and standing so many times in a given time frame. And what are they doing? They're strengthening those muscles. They're learning, they're growing, they're taking massive daily action. And you know, if we as adults could do that, when we're talking about taking action, the biggest thing that keeps us from taking that action is our fear of failure. The biggest thing that keeps us from taking that action is our fear that we're not going to be able to somehow accomplish it. And so oftentimes it keeps us from doing it at all. Right? We just end up not doing it, not taking that action because our fear gets in our way. Our fear tells us we're not going to be able to accomplish it. We'll never be able to do it. Can you imagine if a baby told themselves, I'm probably never going to be able to walk. I may never be able to talk. So I probably shouldn't even try. Babies don't do that. Babies think, they see the success around them. They recognize the success around them. These are people that love them and that are encouraging them, telling them that they can do it too. And so they take massive action every day, even in the face of daily failure. They're still taking massive action every single day. And they don't allow those miniature failures or those setbacks, those growth moments, which is really what they are. They don't let that growth that's happening to deter them from their end goal of walking and talking. They will daily continue to take action towards that walking and that talking until eventually, the story. This is what happens to each one of us typically, right? Where eventually that baby will begin to walk. That baby will begin to walk, and that walking will get better and better and better. They'll fall. They'll continue to fall along the way. They'll fall on their bums. They'll fall on their faces. They'll continue to fall, but they'll walk. And that walking will eventually turn into really stable walking. And then eventually it'll turn into running. And then eventually they'll start to do a lot of other things and they'll be talking and all these things start to come together. But it's not typically until a good, 10 months to a year and a few months. There's obviously every baby's a little bit different, but it's often right around a year that it takes for that child to begin to walk and to begin to talk. Imagine if you gave yourself a year. Imagine if you gave yourself a year of massive action to accomplish any goal that you might have. A year of massive action, of daily working on it, of exercising that muscle, whatever it might be. Whether you're working on building a business or sales, or you're working on weight loss and health. Whether you're working on your relationship. What if you gave a year of massive action to that? And you gave yourself that time, and in that action, you didn't let failure dissuade you. You didn't let failure get in the way of you taking that massive daily action, that consistent daily action. I'll tell you right now what would happen if you gave yourself that full 12 months to take massive action every single day. You didn't lie to yourself and tell yourself you were doing it, but you were literally doing it, right? You were taking that action. If you gave yourself 12 months to do it, your life would look different in 12 months. Your life would look better in 12 months. You would start achieving things that you've always wanted to accomplish, but never did because you didn't allow yourself the space to take that massive action. My invitation for you today is to take massive action. Get out of your mind, get out of your way. Don't let fear get in the path of you taking massive action and accomplishing your goals starting today. With that, everyone, have a fantastic day, have a fantastic week, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.